Welcome, everyone, to the World Famous Adventurers Club of Los Angeles. My name is Rich Mayfield, member 1211. I'm joined tonight by Edie Littlefield Sundby, member 1249. Thank you for joining us. And you've presented to the club before, right? When was the last time we saw you?
Well, in 2018, at your Night of High Adventure, you invited me to come in as a keynote. And it was actually a delightful time. And I inquired at that time if I could join, and I was politely said no.
And 7 years later, we got you in.
Exactly. Yeah, just be patient, huh?
Well, it's good to be with you. Yes. It's good to be here with you tonight. It's good to have you as a member, and it's good to be able to hear this story in this format. I'm excited to hear it. Phoebe just introduced you to the crowd, but your big thing is you hike a lot or walk a lot. The Mission Walker, right? When
Yes.
did you acquire that moniker, the Mission Walker?
It really came about when I started walking the California Mission Trail. And that's what, my book's all about, the Mission Walker, and how that came about. And
how did it come about?
Yeah,
That's what we want to know.
One more slide.
One more slide forward. Is the book, did you bring copies if someone wants to?
I don't have any copies with me tonight.
We can figure it out.
Well, in 2015, when Pope Francis was in Washington, D.C. to canonize Junipero Serra as the patron saint of California, I had a pleasure of writing the article in the Wall Street Journal that commemorated his journey here and about Junipero Serra. I'd already written a series of articles for the New York Times and also some for the Wall Street Journal about the walking experience. And so the book came about. HarperCollins, someone saw the article and said, this would be a good book. So they invited me to write the book.
And let's get to you walking the trail. What inspired you to actually follow this route?
We all walkers want a place to walk. And for me, it all started way back when I was diagnosed with cancer and would go up the coast of California and actually see those beautiful mission bells. But we'll talk about that just a little bit later.
Okay.
The walk really, I have one lung. And if I don't walk, I don't breathe, which is very motivating to get out and walk. Now, I walk every day about 2 to 3 miles, but that's not enough. I need to walk 2 to 300 miles at a time, a couple of times a year at least, in order to, supercharge the cells, which I can have almost normal lung capacity with one lung.
I'd say that's super lung capacity.
Yeah. And so, but it's wild and crazy. Why does anyone want to walk 1,600 miles? And I think, the people have been walking wild, crazy distances forever. And the Jesuits actually said that it was a foolish thing to do or a crazy thing to do, but we
The Jesuits said that?
Yes, and the Franciscans,
The Franciscans
yes,
said that too?
well, they just said, anything that we want to do that's foolish, you wonder why and what pushes you to do that. And I think that we all hear within ourselves this, I call it the siren song of our youth, if you will, that get out and do something with purpose of meaning. And there's nothing as great as a long distance walk.
I totally agree. I love long distance walking. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to do it for a while, but 200-300 miles a year sounds like a pretty good goal.
Well, you've walked, I believe, from you said Key West all
Key
the way
West
up
to Canada.
To Canada.
Yeah.
So you understand what it feels like to be
But
out
it sounds
there.
like, did you know about this route before you kind of embarked on it?
I had no idea about this, the biggest piece, which is below the border. Here in California, actually in the United States, you get a little bit myopic about how things are. And I knew about the California Mission Trail because I first walked the California Mission Trail, but I had no idea about south of the border and what all that meant and how great that was. Another reasons that I like to get out and walk is because once you have an existential issue with your life and your life is almost taken from you, you feel this desire to really live, to really see like that 1,000-mile walk that John Muir did, very similar to your walk. He did that in his late 20s when he was blinded in one eye. He thought he wasn't going to be able to see anymore, and so he went out and he walked 1,000 miles. For me, I lost my lung, I lost other body parts. I didn't know how long I was going to walk, so I wanted to get out and really, really live while alive.
Nothing like a good crisis to spur you into action, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that I call it the siren song to our soul, that when we're 10 years old or a very young child, the inner voice of our young child, and we all hear that. And it's amazing, if I talk to people, when did they first get the inkling of what they wanted to do? And the first inkling of excitement, adventure, and oftentimes it's at the age of 9, 10, 11, 12. And for me, I, as a young child, that was my book, that was my little notebook, the quote before, and it's, don't expect adventure to come to you, you must go after it. I wrote that when I was 10.
It's very insightful as a 10-year-old.
Well, I always had this inkling just to get out and do things. It's kind of like John Goddard,
Right.
Famous John Goddard here from the club. He said, get out there and do, dare to do. And he said, fear is the only failing.
So I have noticed this about people that do long distance trails, long distance walks, hikes, extended periods. They all are there for a reason, right? Everybody's on the trail for a reason.
Yes.
And oftentimes it is a crisis. So how long after, I guess, your recovery, like what went down and how did you decide that you wanted to walk?
Well, we're all hit by that blue sky lightning that knocks us to our knees. And the blue sky lightning comes when there's a clear sky and there's no lightning anywhere in sight. And it's 10 times more lethal and more ferocious than normal lightning. And those things happen to us all the time. And for me, that blue sky lightning was learning that I had stage 4 cancer, and it was in 8 organs. And so I had so much cancer in me that they didn't want to treat me. They compassionately suggested just palliative care in San Diego because I was dying so fast. Why treat me and make me go through the suffering? And so that was really when I really started walking. I never did much walking before then. And
just to kind of help clear your mind and deal with
to deal with all that chemotherapy, because it basically took 6.5 years, 79 rounds of chemo, 832,000 milligrams of chemo. Oof. I've lost 60% of my liver, 10 to my colon, 10 to my stomach, my right lung, and part of my throat. And through all of that, I don't think I would be alive today. I know I would not be alive today if I did not walk and walk seriously. You see, the body, it's a healing machine, but it requires movement to do its job. Absolutely, yes.
So when did it really kind of, when did the thought solidify in your head that, like, I need to be walking? This is healthy, this makes me feel good.
It was during that period of time.
While you're doing chemo?
Yes, because that was the only way I could process this massive amount of very cytotoxic chemicals, poison really actually coming into your body. And it has to almost kill you in order to kill the cancer. And the only way I could really process that and deal with that was to drink voluminous amounts of water and go out and walk and try to sweat it out. Have the chemo come in me, kill the cancer, and then get it out of me as fast as I could.
So where were you going on these walks during this time? Because you couldn't go on an extended...
Exactly. I walked, after my chemo infusions, I'd walk. Well, you have 48 hours or 72 hours where you have some energy after, and then you're flat out for a couple of weeks. But yes, I'd walk the canyons around San Diego.
San Diego?
Yes. Yeah.
And then when did it come into your mind that, like, I need to go on an extended walk? Was this after you were clear, so to speak?
Yes. Basically after, well, there's. I wish I could move the slides along.
Say next.
Yeah. So I knew that in order to live, I had to keep moving, and I said, whatever cancer does to me, I'm not going to stop walking. I'm going to continue to walk, and I found that not only when I walked did it help me deal with physical things that were going on as well as the other things going on, but it also helped with fear. Once you start to move, you're not nearly as afraid. And so,
Because you're focused, right?
exactly.
You're focused on moving.
so I got through the 6.5 years and all of the chemotherapy and everything, and it was at the end of that time that I thought about walking, and I wanted to do a very serious walk. Going up to Stanford for all of this treatment, I had passed all of the mission bells. There's a mission bell every mile on Old Historic Highway 101.
Very well marked in California.
Very well marked, and it's beautiful, all those mission bells. And I'd seen them all the time, and every time I saw a mission bell, I wanted to get out and hug it because I was so excited to still be alive. And so that's how it started. And it's really nice that those mission bells were put up there. They were put up there starting in 1906. And,
Really?
Yeah, and they become collector's items. People steal them, and they keep having to replace them.
Do you have one?
No, but I'd certainly like to.
I think you deserve one, right? Just putting
I've
the
got a
word
little-
out.
I've
If
got
anybody
one-
wants to steal a mission bell for Edie, I think she deserves one, right?
I've
That'd
got
be a
one
good
for
thing
my
for
desk.
this club to.
I've got
yeah.
a desk size.
No, we want a real one for your front yard.
But we walk and we walk to heal, and healing really takes place. I feel at like 3 levels. We heal physically. We get stronger when we walk. We heal spiritually. We get much more transcendent, and it could be the dopamine. It probably is. But walking becomes very, very addicting. Anyone who's taken a long walk knows once you start walking, you really can't stop. And then, of course, it's emotionally healing, because as we walk, we become calmer and more at peace.
That's true.
So,
And then all the. I mean, I think everybody knows the health benefits of walking.
I'm not going to get into that because that's a whole that's a whole course in and of itself. But it is the most prescribed medicine in the world. Even Hippocrates knew it was the best medicine in the world. And if it comes as close to being a miracle drug as anything we have. And I always say, don't take a pill, just get out and take a walk.
Keep walking.
Keep walking, keep
Right.
moving.
So when you started this trip, like you said, the bells through California are fairly well documented. You mentioned that not as well documented was south of the border in Mexico.
And we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes.
Okay, and that's part of this trip, right?
Exactly. But things are always changing, and when you're out there walking, you're really seeing things as they change. And when you walk, your body's always in the present, and the step you just took is the past. The step you're taking now is the future, and so it really. It transforms you, and you're changed, but everything around you is always changing too. The trails we walk were animal trails, and they became Indian trails, that became explorers trails, that became railroad lines, that became interstates, and you just wonder, well, what's going to change next? What are the roads that we walk? What are they? It's like a canvas. Where's that going to lead?
Did you think
next?
a lot about how the El Camino Real has changed over the years in California?
Oh, yes. It's changed a lot, but there's certain things that have remained the same, and that is spirit never changes. Spirit is always there, and beauty and all those other things. And the California Mission Trail is as gorgeous today as it was 250 years ago. Those 21 missions that form a ladder from San Diego to Sonoma are the most beautiful treasures in the state of California. And for 250 years, they've been there, and they're still very active, and they're very welcoming. Whenever I get to a mission, the Franciscans who still run them, and most of them are Franciscan, 19 out of the 21, but they never asked me if I was Catholic. They never asked me if I they didn't care, they didn't ask me if I was a Democrat or Republican. They didn't ask me if I was rich or poor. All they asked me is, are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Can we say a healing prayer for you? And are you looking for a place to stay tonight? And you felt like you had arrived home, and it was really that feeling that was really transformative.
And they've carried that into the modern era. That's amazing, because when I think of these missions, I think of them mostly as museums these days.
No, and they're not at all. They're very active parish churches, very, very active.
And How did they react? You know, you kind of mentioned, but did they ask you a lot about what you were up to? And
They knew about it. They, everybody.
got around.
The word gets out, that somebody's walking because it's, and it wasn't 800 miles. It was 21 missions, and you arrive at a mission every 2 or 3 days. But and you anticipate that, you look forward to it, and people from the surrounding communities come out and walk with you, and you hear all about the culture, the stories, and the history. And then when you arrive there, the Franciscans, the priests, are waiting for you. And so, so it took me 55 days walking on average 15 miles a day. And I started that walk 5 months after Stanford removed my right lung. So when I got to Sonoma after 55 days, when I went back to San Diego, my lung capacity was 80% of normal.
Wow.
And I always say that when we're out there walking, like Mr. Rogers informed us or suggested us when we were children, it said, find the helpers. And I think that wherever you are, wherever wilderness trek or wherever you are, there's always helpers, and look for the helpers. And that's how that I was able to complete that 800 miles.
So tell us a little bit about who helped you along the way. Who was with you the whole time, and who kind of?
Well, I walked by myself. Okay, and on a long distance walk, you can't walk with anyone.
I know.
You don't even walk 2 or 3 miles with someone because your cadence is different. Your pace is different, and actually, you're there. You're both walking for different reasons, or 3 people if they're out walking. They're walking for different reasons, and I'm walking really really for joy, the joy of walking. And I don't want to talk. I want to pour out all the clutter. I don't want anything. I've never, ever walked 1 mile with anything in my ears because I want to hear everything that is going on. And when you're a long-distance walker out there, you have to be very attentive because dangers are everywhere. And so what happens to you is you become very, very mindful of everything. And mindfulness is not sitting around deep breathing and going, Mindfulness is the electricity of existence, of life. And you feel that, you find that on a long walk.
Yeah, being present. So you didn't walk with anybody. That does make sense. I'm sure people walked with you for a couple miles.
But they would come and,
they come and
join, exactly.
Yeah. But did you have a support team?
I actually had a friend had loaned me a camper van, and another friend from Oklahoma came out and drove it for about 3 weeks or 4 weeks. That's one thing, and I think it was Thoreau that said, if you walk alone, you leave now. If you walk with someone, you wait. And sometimes even with a support, that can be the same thing.
Right.
And so the person was good for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then I had to get someone else, and then someone else. So, and toward the end there, the last 200 miles, my husband, he hates to walk, but he loves to ride a bicycle, and so he rode the entire last 200 miles of the California Mission Trail on his bicycle. And he would go back and forth, because I'm walking about 1/3 the speed he is.
And he just buzzed by.
All the time. Yes, exactly. Yes. So
you kind of talked about how the missions are, I assume, in California, but what were the missions like in Mexico?
Well, we're going to get down to the Mexico
I want to get down to the nitty-gritty of it.
Okay, so things are always changing. And so 2 years later, and we can click it again. 2 years later, the cancer came back into my remaining lung, and it was just one large tumor. So Stanford was able to radiate that tumor, and it takes quite a long time to know if radiation is going to effectively kill the cancer. And so I didn't want to wait. And lucky for me, my mission walk was not over because I hadn't even walked half of it. I just walked the California piece of it. Mm-hmm. And so by that time, I'd gotten very familiar with all the history and everything down south. And I got on a plane in Tijuana and flew down to Loreto. As you can see, that's where the California Mission Trail starts, is Loreto up to, and then San Diego's about halfway. So
and
it's
the
about
mission
18
in
miles.
Loreto that's the southernmost mission.
Yes.
In the Spanish mission
Yes,
system.
that's the mother mission of California.
That's the mother mission. That
Mother
was the
mission.
first one.
Yes, that's the very first one. And if you've never seen it, really go down to Loreto Mission in Loreto, Mexico, and see it. It's absolutely spectacular.
And is this an active Catholic church now?
Very, very active, yes.
So had they heard of you by the time you made it down there, or this was kind of a restart to?
That was a total restart, yes. And this was a Jesuit trail that went from Loreto up through 5 mountain peaks all the way to the California border.
So from a historical standpoint, both the Franciscans and the Jesuits established this system, and they kind of worked together? What was the deal?
The Jesuits were the ones down in Baja California, Mexico, and then King Carlos threw them out. He thought, and arrested them actually, and killed a lot of them in prisons and imprisoned them in Europe. He actually arrested them and sent them on ship back because he thought they were stealing from him. He thought there were massive amounts of gold and silver, Baja California, Mexico, that they were pilfering from the crown. And so basically when he removed the Jesuits, he instated the Franciscans to come in and take over.
Huh.
And so all of Baja California, Mexico is Jesuit, and that's a Jesuit trail. And you can always tell a Jesuit road, it's straight through the mountains, just like a straight, just like a Roman road. And this one goes straight through the spine of the Sierras. Now, there are no maps of this old trail. People have fragmented, tried to put it together, but the map that I took was from a book that was published in like 1974. In 1969 was California's 250th anniversary, and Helen Copley, who ran all of the newspapers, she sent a whole contingency down to Baja California, Mexico, and she said, I want you to map the old California Mission Trail down there. I want you to map it. And so one of the people there had hand-drawn maps. And in his book, he had 6 or 7 of these maps. And so I tore them out, and I actually had those maps with me. Because when you're on a long walk, GPS never works.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, Google has this team called Ground Truth, because Google knows their maps are not ground truth. Their maps are 2 or 3 or 4 years old, and things are constantly changing on the ground. And so you're very foolish if you ever go out into the wilderness at all with just...
So how are you? So down south, how are you following this trail that you weren't sure exactly where it was? Definitely no bells to follow, right?
There were no bells, there were no guides, there were nothing. However, people live on that trail, and they've been living there for 300 years in roadless ranchos. But
so that's what kind of marked the trail. You knew, like,
it's
about here, and there's settlement.
I had the map torn from this old book, but I knew that when I went down there that there would be no banks. There would be no ATMs. There would be nothing, no restaurants, no convenience stores. There's nothing out there, and so I went to Wells Fargo. I got $4,000 in pesos, small bills, and then I also got an Iridium satellite phone, and this would allow me to ping a satellite for my location once a day, because I had no idea where I was.
What year was this again?
That was in 2015.
Okay.
Okay, and
you got a burro?
Yes. Oh, yes. And so, yes. Well, the gear is always the biggest problem, isn't it? When you did your walk, And when I walked from San Diego to Sonoma, and I'd done other walks, and actually one of the walks that I did, and I wrote about for the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, I'd gone 100 miles with a walk with nothing but a 22 pocket vest. Because when you walk, you get down to the very bare essentials, and you learn very quickly.
Well, our gear is very light, but in this area that you're at, it's the availability of food, water,
absolutely,
all that
water
kind of stuff.
especially. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So
this burro was primarily carrying food, water.
Yeah, and actually, I have a little list in my book of everything I had on that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Very detailed.
Yeah. So.
Next slide. This is the list?
No. What this is Dr. Donner's Wilderness Survival Kit. My nurse, she was Dr. Fisher's assistant at Stanford. She was well-versed in wilderness medicine, and she had this Dr. Donner's Wilderness Survival Medical Kit. And basically, it's all these medications that cover you for just about any calamity that may happen. Well, she ordered every single one of them from CVS. She put an order in. So I had hundreds and hundreds of pills. And since I don't speak much Spanish, in Google, I looked them up and I translated, and I had a little label on each of the pills. What if a rattlesnake had
So
a
you didn't
rattlesnake
bring these
bite?
down, you purchased these in Mexico?
No, I had the pills with me. I had hundreds of pills.
Okay.
What if a rattlesnake bit me? What if water was bad? What if a mule kicked me on the head? What if I, fell off of a cliff and broke a leg or
So
something?
you labeled these in Spanish, so if someone
Yes.
found you, you could say, "Get me the rattlesnake pill." Or,
Yeah. So yeah.
That's interesting.
If I was incapacitated.
And where was your husband during all this?
Oh,
Was he
he-
like, "Have fun, honey"?
Well, he's actually in San Diego.
Okay, so
And he's actually got a map that every time I ding that Iridium satellite phone,
Right.
he gets a ding on the map on his computer.
Do you guys have a check-in protocol? Like, if I don't check in within a couple days,
Well,
get in the car?
No, we didn't really. No,
What was the most amount of time? Because I know, like when I was hiking, I used a spot, and sometimes the messages didn't go through. So we had to talk about that. Like, if it's been a week and I haven't pinged, start to worry.
That would be serious, yeah. Now, keep in mind that these are roadless ranchos out there, and the people who live out there have lived out there for 300 years. They were the cow herders, the sheep herders, they were the artisans, they were the blacksmiths, and they're very familiar with that trail and very familiar with where the water is. But they're only familiar with about 30 miles of it, and that's all they will take you on is 30 miles. But they communicate with each other via shortwave. Cell phones don't work down there, and so it's all shortwave. And they were communicating, so there was a lot of communication, even back and forth. There was one person, Synovio, who would kind of keep tabs on where I was along the trail.
So you would talk to these ranchers that live out there and say, "Hey, can you take me to the next ranch? Or can you show me where this trail goes?"
Well, see, and also I had $4,000 in pesos. I paid for the mule, I paid for the vaquero guide, and
Did you have a vaquero the whole way? The same guy, or
No. It took 20 because they were only comfortable with 30 miles at a time. So
Okay.
I never knew where the next mule was going to come from. I never knew where the next meal was going to come from, and I didn't know where the next man was going to come from or woman. Some of the vaquero were vaqueras. They were actually women.
and so you bought that? Is it a burro, a don? What species is this?
Well, it's a mula or a macho. They call them macho or mulas. Most of them, it's a cross between a horse and a donkey. Although quite a few times I had a donkey, and
So it swapped.
yes.
You didn't have the same.
Old
Faithful the whole way
I'd say
through.
I had a different animal every 5 or 6 days.
Wow.
Absolutely, because I didn't own these animals. I was paying 200 or 300 pesos a day for an animal, and so when I came to the end of that 25 or 35 kilometers, it went back, and so
So
hopefully
you had to get passed off.
Exactly.
Every 4 or 5 days, every
Exactly.
30
yes.
miles.
And because I was paying, and because I was alone, and I was on a pilgrimage, and they were very respectful of the fact what I was doing, and they love their mission trail. I mean, they love their culture.
They live on it, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and these are real cowboys. These are the real thing. I mean, yes, and so.
And what's the distance between the missions in Baja?
That's plus or minus 3 or 4 days. They never would tell you exactly how long it was going to be, and you weren't
Between the
really
missions, the
yes.
actual- yeah.
Well, there weren't really the missions as we have them here in California because they're almost all ruins.
Okay.
In fact, they're totally ruins, except for maybe 2 or 3 of them. There are 17 down there, and only 2 or 3 are still really standing. It was about 3 or 4 or 5 days between missions.
And did you make a point to stop at every single mission? And
Oh, yes.
is that where you slept basically?
Yes.
Did you sleep on a mission?
Yes, but, of course, I slept in a tent every night. We can go ahead and look at the next slide. This area down Baja California, Mexico, people kind of realize, think about it as the beaches that they go to,
Right.
The tourist, but it's so much more. In fact, in 1908, the American Geographical Society said that it was the the least explored region of the world, except for the polar regions. And actually, it still is, those Sierras, because they are just, they're inhospitable. I like what a Jesuit said in 1767. He called it a miserable, wretched place. And
That's what he wrote in his journal?
Yeah, I've got a video coming up next that you'll see. They'll run to the mule to break its neck. You will see. You will see.
So you're walking.
This is the Mission Trail.
Yeah, you're walking out. Yeah,
That's
it's
cactus.
overgrown, but
That's cactus.
You can feel that there was a trail there hundreds of years
Yes.
ago.
And yes. And there's actually, a vaquero up ahead, who's,
Right, yeah.
I can't see him through all the cactus and everything.
Huh.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that he knew this trail, but obviously it's not well traveled, right?
It's not traveled a lot, but they, they live there. They know every inch there, and especially the water. They know
That's
the water.
definitely as off the beaten path as it gets. I think.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was a beaten path, but
Yeah, exactly.
Not anymore.
Overgrown with 300 years of cactus.
Yes.
And underneath all of that cactus were rattlesnakes. They have an enormous number of rattlesnakes down there. But it was the scorpions and the giant centipedes that really freaked me out.
how do you deal with the rattlesnakes? The vaquero's going ahead, so he's gonna.
Yeah, and the rattlesnakes, they it's all vibration. They know you're coming. And, we would see rattlesnakes just about every day, but you get kind of used to that, and they aren't really aggressive. They're scurrying out of your way, especially out of a donkey's way or a mule's way.
Right.
The next slide,
That's
please.
pretty cool.
But as I got close to the U.S.
And
border,
yes, security.
well, about 200 miles from the border, I started running into narcos in a very big way, because the old Mission Trail down there, the El Camino Real, runs through a lot of arroyos, and that's how they get the drugs. Because the
An
arroyos,
arroyo is a river. Right?
it's a riverbed, yes,
Okay.
and we have them here in California, and sometimes it's the only place that there's any coverage, because the desert, can be easy for people to see, or for drones or surveillance, they can see the drugs coming in. But on the arroyos, they can actually slip the drugs up the arroyos. And so as I got closer and closer to the U.S. border, I ran into narcos. And I will say I was never in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I never really felt threatened that much. I was with a vaquero one time, and we ran in a pretty bad situation with some narcos, and he actually left me there.
The vaquero did?
He did. He did.
You didn't pay him enough for this?
No, he wasn't going to risk his life. But then the next day, someone else showed up.
So what do you mean he left you there? Like there were some vaqueros or there were some narcos
I had
around
my
and
tent, and I had all my gear, and I had a donkey. Yeah, and so
he's like, I'm not staying the night here?
He decided not to stay the night. But, I think probably felt I was safer than he was. But some of the vaqueros, they know how to wield a machete better than narcos do.
So going back one
Yes.
photo, who are these guys?
Okay. These, I'm not really sure. You can't tell the good guys from the bad guys down there. Are they federales? Are they drug smugglers? But I had a little Olympus tough camera around my neck. I could take photos. No one had any idea I was taking photos. And I got some pretty spectacular photos. I even got a short video of people coming towards us, and then gunfire. They were shooting at each other. Yeah.
So what was this interaction like?
There was no interaction. I had no interaction with them.
You just kind of walked by and everybody looked at each other, or what?
No, I was with I was hiding behind the tail end of that truck. And I was with the vaquero, and the vaquero just acted like nothing was going on. And
I'm sure you were the subject of conversation.
I imagine, yes.
Edie Sundby walking in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And these guys are like, what's going on?
Well,
they talked about that for weeks.
Sometimes the narcos would kind of laugh about it.
Yeah.
They would kind of laugh about, because everybody's, yeah. But, come on, I had stage 4 cancer.
Yeah.
I'd much rather die out there than die in bed.
Absolutely.
We're all mortal. We're all going to die.
I like to talk about good ways to go, and like not a bad way.
Yeah, right,
right?
exactly.
Beautiful place.
Exactly. You know, you're doing something you love. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next slide.
Next slide, yeah.
And before I went down there, Harry Crosby had actually written that book that I tore the pages out. He was 95 years old, and I met with him, and he said, never, ever go in the Sierras without a person that was born in the Sierras to guide you, because you just won't make it. There's no way. And the vaqueros, he said, will protect you. He said they know everything, every shard of lava rock. They know everything for 25 or 30 miles.
So I see other pack animals here. Were these guys walking with you? Or
They're
they
actually
riding,
changing. No, they're actually switching out. One vaquero is going back to his rancho, and the other vaquero is coming to meet me.
And how did you
with fresh
negotiate all
animals.
this? Do you speak Spanish?
I
Can you
didn't
say-
initiate any of this. They knew that I was coming and that I was paying them. See, there's no place out there for them to make money.
So everybody knew the deal.
Yes, oh, absolutely.
So-
And I was
so-
very independent. I didn't expect them to cook for me. I didn't expect them to load up my stuff for me or set up my tent. This was not a glam vacation or a glam trip at all. I did my own tent. I did my own packing. I did my everything, you know. And
Well,
I
how'd
actually
you find the
often
first
fed
guy?
I often fed the vaquero, although they
Yeah.
did not like the meals ready to eat.
No.
Yeah.
How'd you find the first guy? Because the first guy, it's like, so you're going to take me this far.
Well, the way I found the very first one, there was Trudy Angel down there, and she took people into the desert via muleback or whatever on the weekends and all. And so I found her on the internet, and I kind of connected with her. So at the time, I had the promise of one of her pack animals for 10 days. She said, you're in between tourists, so I can give you a pack animal for 10 days. And then she had a vaquero guide that she wasn't going to be using for 5 days. And she said, and you can have Chema, you can pay Chema to take you. So when I went down there, I had the promise of a pack meal for 10 days and a guide for 5 days. And that's all the guarantee I had. But that was good enough for me. I mean, dealing with stage 4 cancer, you're dealing with uncertainty.
Yeah.
So I'm very comfortable with uncertainty.
That's so cool. So tell us about this.
Yes. Well, you're in the desert, and death is everywhere. You know, and the vaqueros can protect you, but no one can really protect you from death.
Mm-hmm.
Death comes to us all, and you just don't want to do anything foolish. And the only thing foolish out there is being without water. Next slide, please. The cactus, though, the cactus was absolutely vicious, and it was very you can't even explain it. And I knew that there were parts of the Old Mission Trail that were completely overgrown. I think some of the vaqueros were a little surprised at how thick some of the cactus was, because we both had machetes, and it would take us hours to cut through the cactus.
But it was pretty obvious that that's where the trail was going.
Oh, absolutely. That was definitely the trail.
Cactus.
Yeah, and I mean, all of it is cactus.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't have any choice.
So what was, you mentioned that this Jesuit trail was straight through the mountains. Like, was it actually did they put road work in? Or like what kind of work did the Jesuits put in?
No,
Like,
it was just back and forth.
like
It was-
how wide? Like how wide did it?
in places it's like this.
So trail,
Yes,
not road.
yes. And actually, a lot of the trails that they used were previously old animal trails.
And you think, like, when the Jesuits were doing this, because you mentioned you knew a lot of history about this, so I'm curious, were they doing it the same way with pack animals and single file?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, yes. Okay, so I've got another video coming up here. Constant hit in the face. Every one of these plants has about 1 million thorns
You got
on
a horse, huh?
it. 1 million thorns on it.
And around.
Oh, yeah, there are places that you
hospitals
just
and probably
absolutely
cactus.
could not, walk. And, it's like Junipero Serra walked 24,000 miles, mostly on foot. Almost every walker has a pack animal at some point. And at some point, you have to, usually it's a donkey.
Yeah.
You have to get on and,
I don't know. That scares me. I just imagine that horse running me into that cactus, like your leg. I mean, I guess
Oh,
that's why they
yeah,
have the big
absolutely.
chaps on, right?
Yeah, no, I
You
didn't.
didn't have the chaps on.
No, I had gaiters on. I had,
Yeah.
yeah. But this is this hat is made in the U.S. and it's wool felt, and this is a desert hat actually, even though it's wool, because it's so cold in the morning. It can be
Well, that's
120
cool.
degrees during the day,
Can I see that?
and in the morning it's freezing, and at night it's freezing as soon as that sun goes down. So you have this, and also this is cactus proof. Cactus will not stick to this, and it is waterproof. So and it's windproof because
That's
I've got
cool. And you got a rattlesnake tail on there.
yeah, that was.
Is that one from the trip?
That's one from the trip. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It's amazing, like you said, I had no idea that Baja was so remote or so
Was so
unexplored.
wild. It was
Yeah.
so wild. Yes. And when you're out in the middle of the desert, you're just just grateful for everything, even the shade of a small piece of cactus. I always say that when you have everything, it's hard to be grateful for anything, and when you have nothing, you're grateful. You're grateful for everything, and even the shade of a small
Oh yeah, I know the
cactus
shade.
plant.
The shade. When I was hiking, just shade to shade.
Exactly.
Never stop if you can't find shade.
Exactly.
Did you write this? That passage that you wrote there?
Yes. Oh,
This is from
this
the
is all.
book?
This is all from the book. Yeah, everything.
You want to read us this passage from the book real quick?
Oh, it's just that I took a cup of water from my water bottle and used it to brush my teeth and wash my face and hands. In a country where water is scarce, every drop is treasured. It amazed me what I could do with one small cup of water. Yes, indeed, water was too precious to cleanse.
Yeah.
Much too And
Did you ever encounter flowing water anywhere?
yeah, you'll see one coming up in a
Okay.
minute here. Okay, right here. Okay.
There it is.
Okay, maybe the video, yeah.
It's a good opportunity.
First time I've washed my face. In about 5 days. Now, the Vaquero, in Vaqueros, they don't exactly know how to use a camera, but the Vaquero headed a little off center there.
Mm-hmm.
But I pushed that mule aside. That's the first water we had seen in 5 days, and and you just drink directly as the mules are drinking. You're so thirsty at that point, and it's amazing.
No purification or
No
what'd
purification.
You carry? What'd you carry in terms of purification?
I had a
and stuff
little
like that?
UV filter.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
it-
is this a pretty
yeah,
standard campground
that's-
along?
yeah,
That looks
exactly.
pretty well vegetated.
I had a small Big Agnes tent that I could put up in about 10 minutes, and but the winds were so bad down there at times that it would blow my tent completely into the cactus. The cactus always caught it though, and it would have all my gear in it and everything, and it'd still blow away.
Really?
Yeah, that happened about 4 or 5 times.
That's pretty strong wind.
And then, sometimes I just slept on a sweaty mule blanket,
Just out in the open?
just out in the open.
Interesting. Oh, those are some beautiful shots of
You know,
sunset.
yeah, I mean, it's just so gorgeous in the desert, and that is really what keeps us going. I think any adventure, what keeps you going is the absolute raw beauty of just being out in the wilderness, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. The shots like that, like you're right, and you get that. Sometimes it's few and far between, but that does keep you going at night. When you how late did you travel into the night?
Well, that's a good point. In the desert, you stop at 3 o'clock. You stop at least an hour before sunset, because when the sun sets, it's immediately pitch dark.
Yeah.
And it's immediately freezing. It's hard to even comprehend how cold it can get. And so the story here is I had arrived at this rancho, and I'd ride right at 5 o'clock, but it was getting so dark out. And Maria Luisa, she had no electricity, so she took a flashlight, and she had a small propane little stove there, and she boiled water and to make me coffee, and she made some tortillas for me, and she has a small goat ranch and out in the middle of nowhere, and the hospitality there was just amazing. After she fixed the coffee and the tortillas, she motioned for me to follow her, and back behind a curtain on a dirt floor, she had some wood planks, and she had some concrete blocks and some wood planks, and that's where she slept. And she moved over her blankets, and she made room for me and my sleeping bag, right on the very little
cool.
bed where she slept. But I found that every single day in Mexico. I found that kind of hospitality, that kind of brotherly love, if you will, everywhere in Mexico. And it always amazed me because, we're afraid to walk in our own neighborhood. And we're afraid sometimes of the border. And it's too bad what the situation that's happened with the drugs and the people smuggling and all that. But in their heart, most of them south of the border are just the most generous, warm, Christian people you'll ever meet, ever, anywhere in your life. So I made it. It was back 972 miles. I did the GPS, and so it was
And these
972 miles.
these are your points that you checked in at?
Exactly. That was every one of my GPS pings.
Very cool.
Okay. And then I got to Tijuana. This is Pancho Dueñas, my last vaquero. And I got to the border, and yeah.
And where on the
it was over.
border was the end of this trail?
Right there, you can see the Tijuana airport in the back.
Really?
Yeah.
So the El Camino Real, how
yeah.
many miles inland does it cross?
It's actually pretty much on the coast.
It's on the
It's
coast?
pretty much on the coast. Yeah.
Because the Tijuana airport is to the west, east of Tijuana, right?
Right.
So does it go straight through Tijuana?
Well,
is there a mission in Tijuana?
No, there's not a mission in Tijuana. No. It comes up. The mission San Miguel is down there. And, Tijuana is, you have to be a little careful in Tijuana because there's a lot of fentanyl, there's a lot of meth labs, even in 2017, 2015. And we were told very specifically where we could go and where we could not go. And a lot of Mexico, there are no fences. In Tijuana, it was very different. I mean, there were places that we were actually, there were people to meet us and tell us, get out.
So I'm trying
Get
to envision this. So you're coming out of the wilderness.
Yes.
And Tijuana is a very metropolitan city. So how did that look? You're walking out of the wilderness through the city, and you picked up these guys before that. They were the experts, right? They were kind of Tijuana
Yes.
locals.
Now he once he got into the city, he could not take the animals, and so basically he left. And so basically, I was on foot with somebody through the rough city, if you will, yeah. And then walking all the way, the mission trail. Of course, there was no border there,
Right.
and so it just goes directly to Mission San Diego, and it's still pretty defined there. The history books talk about it, and it's the vaqueros. They say, this is my land, this is my trail, this is my road, this is my,
So did you walk up to the fence on the Mexico side of the border?
No.
No?
No. You walk, across the border.
No. Did you walk up to the fence, like tag the fence, and then go around?
There wasn't really a fence
No.
there, no. Well, yeah, I mean, the border, you go through the border.
Right, through the port of entry.
Exactly, a port of entry.
But
yeah.
I'm dealing with the concept of there was no border when the Camino Real was established, right?
Right.
So
right.
it theoretically crosses, like the old trail theoretically
yeah.
crosses this new border at some point, right?
Right. Now, I came back and I've walked several times from the 2 or 3 different times since then. I've walked from the border, from Friendship Park, across the Tijuana Slough even, and up to Mission San Diego, or the old Presidio.
Yeah.
Where the mission was first, before it was out at Alcala. Yeah.
So when you got to the Tijuana and you crossed over Mission San Diego, that essentially finished your trek.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So you walked all the United States side, and then you
Yes.
started in the south.
Yes, I walked from San Diego to Sonoma, and then 2 years later, I walked from Loreto to the border.
How did that feel when you were done?
Well, a mission walk is never done. I've been out walking that trail at least 10 or 11 times since then, different pieces of it. So yeah, and now of course I'm walking across the United States.
Which parts do you go back and walk? Or your favorite parts, or like
Well,
what?
now I'm one of the people who started the California Mission Trail, and there's actually an organization. There are now 3,000 or 4,000 people in our organization, and at any one time there's 100 or 200 or 300 people now out walking the California Mission Trail. Why go to Spain when you can walk California, when you can start in San Diego and walk all the way to Sonoma? And it's absolutely gorgeous. And now it's not bucolic like it is in Spain.
Have you walked the Compostela de Santiago?
No. I've never walked anywhere where there are lots of people. The only places I have ever walked, there was no one, not one person out.
Yes.
And even where I'm walking today,
You're our type of person, Edie.
I cannot walk the PCT. There's 2.5 or 3 million people on that trail. The Appalachian Trail has about 4 million on a year walking that trail, and and Spain is just crazy. You have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. My husband, my daughter went over there. They had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to try to get to the place where they had a bed for the night because it was the only few beds and
no traffic.
A lot
in
of
Baja.
walkers. Yeah. No, where I'm walking, there's nobody.
Once is enough.
Oh, yeah. So my favorite philosopher, Mae West, and absolutely. She says you only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough. And I think that's how we kind of all feel. You want to get as much out of life as you can. And I think it was Oliver Wendell Holmes said, "Yeah, when I'm done, I just want to be totally wasted before I'm thrown on the trash heap, totally wasted." And yeah, we want to just live while alive, live.
So tell us what you're going to do next.
Well, what I'm doing right now.
What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm walking the Old Spanish Trail Road. It's 2,817 miles from San Diego to St. Augustine. And it's also the southern tier of the American Cycling Association. The American Cycling Association has 4 routes across the United States. This is the southernmost, and it's also the shortest. So I'm out there walking, but there are bicycles. I've never seen any other walkers out there, but I have seen quite a few bicyclists. And I've walked, you can see the blue line. I've walked from Pensacola, and I just finished on April the 6th. I finished walking, and I got to the Rio Grande. And I'm just doing this one in segments. I'm walking to slow life down, and I hope the Old Spanish Trail Road lasts as long as I do. So I'm only walking now about 8 miles a day. And I walked from Van Horn, just March and April, I walked from Van Horn to El Paso and up to the border of New Mexico, about 140 miles. And it was about 20 days. And then what I'll do is my next walk will be across Florida. And that's 420 miles. I'll do it starting in November. You have to be careful with the hurricanes, and you have to be very careful with alligators having babies and getting aggressive.
Yeah.
And
can you give us some history about that Old Spanish Trail? This was intended to do what?
Okay. Well, the Old Spanish Trail, since 1537, there's a shipwreck. That's before anything was really known down there. And a shipwreck. There were 600 men, and they were there to see what kind of riches were. The Florida and along the coast. And they had a shipwreck in Tampa, and only the 600, only 4 survived. And one of them, Cabeza de Vaca, actually wrote a journal and actually wrote a book in about 1543 about, it took him 8 years to get from Tampa all the way to El Paso. He actually went beyond that.
4 guys survived.
Yeah.
And
that's the Old
their
Spanish.
plan was to...
That's basically Old Spanish Trail Road.
We know that there's some Spanish missions on that way.
Exactly.
And they walked the whole thing.
Exactly. And so,
Wow.
so basically, that Old Spanish Trail Road is now, it was the National Highway System starting in 1909. They did the Lincoln Highway up north, and they wanted to do the same thing down here. And of course, World War I intervened before they got it all done.
This is essentially Highway 10?
Well, no, it's essentially Highway 90 and Highway 80.
Okay.
And Highway 80 is still remnants of that, even though 8 has That's a problem with a lot of our interstates. It's just obliterated a lot of old roads.
Yeah.
But the old roads still exist. The interstate is here, but the old roads oftentimes exist within half a mile or a quarter mile. And those are absolutely beautiful, beautiful roads and small communities along the way.
And the old Spanish Trail is being reestablished as I guess, primarily a cyclist.
Exactly, yes. And fabulous communities. There are a lot of ghost towns along the way and small communities and lots of personality and, lots of variety.
So can we look at the next slide real quick? I think this shows us your status, right? Or the previous slide, the one right next to this?
I think that, Well, then
Okay.
Yeah, so what I've completely finished Texas. And it was 855 miles, and I was so happy to be done with Texas.
Yeah.
Because it's like 4 or 5 states. I mean, it's crazy.
I mean, I've driven across that many times, and I know that there are some segments there that there's not a lot to look at.
And when people say that, talk about Texas, you can't talk about it. It's just too big. I mean, there's alligators in Houston.
Right.
That's Buffalo Bison Bayou. Yeah, there's alligators that side, and then there's over on the west side, far west Texas. I mean, there's wild feral pigs. There's even black bears, and I mean, it's mountain lions. I mean, it's just totally, totally different terrain. And
Do you
it's
ever have
totally
any
desert.
Do you have any problems with wildlife on this one?
I've seen some mountain lions at night.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a problem with wild-feral pigs, this one, but when I walked West Texas, when I walked from San Antonio to the Pecos River, once around the Pecos River, I ran into a lot of carcasses of the pigs. And I mean, they're huge, they're massive.
Right.
And and when you're walking out there, they do go for cover. So if there's any mosquito or any shrub, that's where they'll be. And oftentimes when I'm out there walking, I'll carry on a loud conversation with myself. I carry a bear bell and I'll carry a whistle and everything, and make a lot of noise. And but if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, if you surprise them, I mean that's the thing. Back them into a corner.
Exactly. So.
Well, that's cool. You definitely are living off the beaten path. I'd say that you're probably, perfect member of this club, right? You're doing everything you're supposed to.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to open it up to questions now. If you're willing to take a few questions. Lance, you want to pass that mic around? Yep. Sure, we have some questions out there. Michael?
Thank you, Edie. What about feeding your horse or your mule, your pack animal, along the way? It didn't look like a lot of vegetation that was suitable for pack animals.
That is a great question, Michael. That's why you don't ever see any horses out there. You don't see any horses.
Horses need
because
more calories.
horses won't eat. Yeah. Well, the vaqueros always knew where the water was. Always. You can do without food for 22 days, but you can't do without water for 2 or 3 days. And so you have to have water, and especially for the animals.
Yeah.
And there's water, the way the water works in the desert, there will be a they call it a teñacha, where it's like hard rock, and then the water falls on it, and it takes very slow to evaporate. But and it can be almost like a little pool of water. We never knew until we got there how much was actually left. But the same water that the mules and the donkeys would drink from, the mountain lions and the wild animals would also gather around there. And, mountain lions do like to eat mules and donkeys. And so the vaqueros were very cautious at night with the animals, that none of them would be carried off by any of the animals.
Question, did you learn to pack your own mule?
I packed my own gear, and I packed my own mule, but I never tied the ropes. The vaqueros would not. They're very they actually hand make all the lariats and they actually hand make them, and so I would pack all of my gear stuff, and I had probably about 25 or 30 pounds of gear, and I would load it onto the mules, and then. They have special racks that the bags fit on, and they would always tie them and double tie them and triple tie them, especially when you're in the mountains. And even the way the vaqueros would tie them, oftentimes the pack would go like that. You know, the mules, I mean, we're talking about very, very steep terrain there,
Right.
and often mountain trails that are only 18 inches, and then it's a very deep drop-off. And so, yeah, and if anytime they're rubbing against the sides of the mountain or anything, they can rub those packs off pretty easy. And also, the animals, they like to go wild on you, you know, especially donkeys. That's why there's 53,000 wild donkeys out in the western United States, because a donkey will, they don't tolerate
You can see that.
servitude.
You know, every once in a while, they're just like, F this, I'm out.
Yeah, but they will eat cactus, Michael. They will eat cactus, and they are very happy eating cactus. Now, you would never see a horse eating cactus, but those mules and the donkeys will eat anything.
So you didn't bring food for them or anything like that?
Oh, no.
It was just, you know, they just found what they found out there, and then you led them to water.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So a medical question.
Yes.
Since you've defied medical logic or all their statistics, you mentioned when you got back from your first walk and you came back from Santa Rosa that you had 80% lung capacity. Was that an increase? Have you
A
found
normal
that-
lung capacity with one lung.
Would be 50.
See, one lung is normally 50.
Okay, so you,
You know, I mean, you know,
okay, so you actually increased
oh,
your lung
absolutely,
capacity.
absolutely.
Because I've read articles that said that isn't possible, so I'm really glad to hear this.
Well, I mean, you know, I mean, Michael, you have one lung. You've lost a lung. And how do you do?
I went skiing at Mammoth without my oxygen, top of the mountain, did okay.
Yeah, yeah, you know, you have to use it. You have to use it. And you have to forget about it. You know, if you're worried and you think about it all the time. But no, but that was so vigorous. The walk was so vigorous. And, you know, walking from San Diego to Sonoma, there are all of these mountains, and you're walking over the mountains. And there are many times that you just don't think you can go on. And I couldn't even hardly breathe a lot of times. But we all know that you do go on. You always find a way to go on. And yeah, so I can do that today. I can get to a point with my lung where I can't breathe all that well. I'll get out and I'll do a 300-mile walk, and I'll come back and fabulous. Oxygenation, ability to breathe, the energy, everything. Just normal, absolutely normal. 80% of normal.
I love that. Sometimes I
Now,
don't
is
feel
it
good, I'll
physically
just take a
80% of
300-mile
normal?
walk.
Probably not physically 80% of normal, but when I'm taking the lung test, when they, you know, the lung test, the velocity and the ability, yeah, 80%.
So I'm going to ask a question here. When you're in that situation where you feel like you've expended it all, you can't go any further, what did you discover about yourself in the process of that pushed you through and you discovered there's more there than you thought there was?
I think that's life. You know, I think when you think you can't go on, you can. And we just have tremendous reserve that we never, ever use, ever. We use so little of our capacity. And when you're out in the wilderness, you just, you maximize it, you make use of it. I don't know, there's a tremendous amount of trust involved, you know. Trust in others, trust in yourself, you know, trust in, you know, we just, it's hard to explain. But like I said, the walking is totally addictive. Totally, you get so euphoric. You get so excited because everything is just, you're so attentive. You're just electric with, you know, you have to be because you're very vulnerable. There's a lot of dangers out there. And so, and terrain, you have to just be aware of everything. So you're just, yeah, I would just say that once you do a walk like that and you experience that feeling, you're looking for that feeling for the rest of your life. You want to?
I can vouch for that.
Yeah. Well, like this lady, she's walked to Compostela 4 times in Spain.
Yeah.
You know, really. And you've walked
I
from.
got to get back to it.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I hope some of you have been inspired by Edie to walk some more. It's the best thing you can do for yourself, the best medicine. Laughter is not the best medicine. Walking is, right?
Walking is, absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us, Edie. Thank you all for joining us tonight.
Thank you.